Welcome back to another deck profile, this time featuring Rosemon and Rosemon X from bt15. Unlike most of my other deck profiles, this one has not been tested at locals, because I only just got the cards this week. So some of the ratios will be subject to change. I'll be suggesting some options at the end of the video, but feel free to comment your thoughts. Again, normally these are tested and I've had a bit of experience with the cards, but not as much this time. But I wanted to get a deck profile out there. So without further ado, for the eggs, I run 4 copies of the bt14 Tamers. We really need DP boost in the Rosemon deck because we don't have many ways in the archetype to boost DP. Suspending a Tamer can be a little awkward if the opponent doesn't have any Tamers, or if they suspend really fast on their turn, so we don't have a chance to suspend it ourselves. But the plus 2000 really makes a difference for us to swing in security and actually live. I do want a 5th egg in this deck, and that's one of the EX4 Pokemon. A lot of our level 4s suspend themselves, so this allows us for a draw in that scenario. But feel free to change the eggs if you like, or just run 4. Starting with the level 3s, the obvious choice is 3 of the BT10 Palmon. Nothing much else to say. It's an amazing searcher because it can grab a vegetation and a fairy. So it can basically grab one of our level 3 or 4s and one of our 5s or 6s. So yeah, really flexible searcher in the deck, and it's a Palmon, which is important. So yeah, no reason not to run 4. The next Palmon we run is 4 copies of the bt14 Palmon. Yes, I am missing one alt, kinda sad. But yeah, this Palmon's really strong, especially in this deck. With the start of main, we can make one of our opponent's Digimon have the effect that if it's suspended, they lose 2 memory until the end of their turn. This is doubly useful because we can suspend it ourselves to basically gain 2 memory. And then if they attack or somehow suspended during their turn, we'll also gain 2 memory. And also have the inheritable, when Digivolving, if there's a green Tamer, reduce the cost by 1. Which is also very nice for climbing up. Lastly, for the level 3s is 4 copies of Rosemon X. Obviously, you know, this is the reason why we run the 8 copies of Palmon. It's just a very simple suspend one of our opponent's Digimon. Of course, to get the when Digivolving effect, I'll have to Digivolve onto one of the Palmons. We're not really going to be playing this for 4, unless they have only 1 blocker and we need to just suspend something and get game. But it's still a very nice card. Its inheritable is if we play one of the green Tamers, we gain a memory. So this obviously works with stuff like the Digimon, which is about to come up next. For the level 4s, we're running 4 copies of the bt14 Digimon. Yeah, it's a really nice card. Lets us play green Tamer for 3 less by suspending one of our Digimon, normally it's itself. This is really good because we can play the Searcher Mimi for free, or we can play a Memory Setter Tamer for 1. And then it has the same inheritable as the Palmon, that if we have a green Tamer, reduce the cost by 1. So we really want to see a Tamer as soon as possible, especially with this card and the inheritables. I find that the games that you don't see a Tamer fast are the ones where you end up getting a lot slower into building up your stack. So I think Tamers are really important in this deck. So 4 copies of the Digimon. Next over level 4, another new one, is the Rosemon X. He's pretty good. He makes it so one of our opponent's Digimon doesn't unsuspend. And that first part doesn't need him to Digivolve onto Digimon or have X antibody in order to use it. However, if he does have one of the latter cards, then he also gets to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon afterwards. The way it's worded is that you choose something that can't unsuspend first, and then you suspend a card, which maybe can come up depending on what you want to do, but normally it works fine anyways. Its inheritable is also very nice for the deck. It's one of the few ways we can get a DP boost. Plus 1,000 for each opponent's suspended Digimon is quite nice. Because even just having like plus 2,000 in our stack can make our Rosemon be at least 13, which should hit over most level 6s in security, and potentially if we get 14 or higher, it makes our swings a lot safer. I have thought about cutting this down to 3 copies, but at the moment I'm trying 4, although it is just 4 Togemon and 4 Togemon X in the deck. Lastly, for level 4s, I'm running 2 copies of the bt15 Sunflowermon. All of our level 5s are fairies, which basically means we can just suspend one of our Digimon, well not suspend one of it, suspend this Digimon to go up into one of our Lilymons for 1 cost. And that's really nice, and it has the same inheritable as half our other stuff, that if it has the green tamer, boost the cost by 1. Yeah, this is just makes it really fast to go up into a 5 and 6. Even though it's not a Togemon or anything, it's really good. Moving on to the level 5s, I am just running 1 single copy of Rosemon X. I find that this card isn't as good in this deck as it is in Bloomlord. In something like Bloomlord, we often end with a lot of level 4s, or at least multiple on the field. And that makes it hard for the opponent to take out both of them when attacking before we can go into an ace for free, so it makes it a lot more threatening. However, we're more of a single stack deck, so it's a little, can be awkward to rely on Blast Digivolving into this card. And if you're regularly Digivolving into it, it's still a solid card. However, the overflow is something you have to worry about, and it's not always the Lilymon you want to just Digivolve into. If it doesn't really do much in the situation. The on-play, you can still on-play it, and that can still be quite cost-effective, especially if you have a Palmon or some Mimis out on the field. You can actually play it, just hard play it, and keep it your turn quite easily. Yeah, so at the moment I'm just running 1 to see how it goes. Next up for the Lilymon is 2 copies of the EX1 Lilymon. This is like the illustration art version or whatever it's called, but it is the X1 version. It has no when Digivolving effect, and just has the inheritable that when one of the opponent's Digimon is suspended, this Digimon gets security attack +1. This potentially lets us hit a lot of security really fast. With the Rosemon rerun that can potentially attack twice and having security attack +1, this is a very aggressive level 5. However, the lack of a when Digivolving effect can definitely come up. And also, you need to suspend something with your level 6 in order to trigger its inheritable. It doesn't just work if they already have something suspended before you go into this. Finally, we run 1 copy of the really old starter tech for Lilymon. I use this more as an emergency card. The when Digivolving, look at the top 5 to grab a level 6 or higher is really good if you're missing a level 6, or you're missing the right level 6 you want to go into, or potentially missing a level 7. However, do note that if you're not looking for a level 6 or 7, you'll just be bottom decking majority of what you search anyways. So it's like a pro-con to this card. It's kind of hard to say how good it is. I wish we had better Lilymons in the deck, because, we're kind of stuck running a lot of aces, something with an inheritable but no when Digivolving, or something with a when Digivolving and no inheritable. So we are lacking a really nice Lilymon to fill in the package. But we take what we get, I guess. With the lack of good Lilymons, we do have a really nice Rosemon X antibody. It's when Digivolving, if there's a suspended Digimon, so that's either field, we gain a memory. So this not only Digivolves onto a Lilymon for 0, we potentially just gain a memory when Digivolving into this. And then, as long as it has Lilymon or X antibody in the sources, we draw 1 for each of our opponent's suspended Digimon. Yeah, so we're just gaining memory, drawing, maybe one or more cards, you know, who knows. Just a really strong card. Again, it doesn't really enable stuff by itself, but it goes well, so well with everything else the deck does. It also is our secondary source of DP boosting in the deck. Same effect as the Rosemon X antibody. And both of them together can lead to you beating over a lot of level 6s, which is what the deck sorely needed. So really, really strong X antibody. Moving on to the level 6, we are running 4 copies of the bt15 Rosemon. This is the more offensive of the 2 recent Rosemons, because its effect to suspend is when digivolving and when attacking. And its second effect to unsuspend when you suspend something is a May effect, which means we can, when digivolve, suspend something, attack, suspend something, and then we can wait to the when attacking in order to unsuspend the Rosemon. We don't automatically have to whiff the effect, which is really nice. This coupled with the EX1 Lilymon is how we potentially hit 4 security in 1 turn, although it doesn't come up as often as you might think. But yeah, this is the more offensive Rosemon, which is why I'm running it at 4, because I just want to hit them hard. Lastly, for the level 6s, we are filling in with 2 copies of the new bt15 Rosemon X antibody. This fills the defensive role that the other Rosemon used to fill, but now I've just got all offensive Rosemon. I'm using this as the main control card for our upper end. When digivolving, we're going to suspend one of the Digimon and Tamers, and they don't unsuspend. And then we have 2 really nasty effects during the opponent's turn. One is if they play a Digimon, like either hard play or play by effect, we get to suspend one of the Digimon. So, you know, if they play something, we can suspend the big stack. If they just hard play something that is rush, we can just suspend it so they can't attack us. That can be really annoying in some decks. If you're versing something like Cross Heart, this is absolutely brutal against something like Cross Heart. I don't really know who's playing Cross Heart nowadays, but it is strong against decks like that. Blue Flower, I guess, is strong against that one too. Its second effect is even better. It does require Rosemon or X antibody to be in its Digivolution cards, but that's not hard to do. When they move from the breeding area to the battle area, you can suspend one of the Digimon. This fixes one of the main problems that green has, that most of green is reactive. You need them to already have stuff out to suspend on your following turn. However, this stops them from just building up an OTK stack in the back, because as soon as they move up the big stack, you just suspend it, and if they don't have a way to unsuspend without attacking, they'll just have to like pass back to you, and you can neutralize the threat later during your turn. Really strong card. Helps with a lot of the control aspect. I'm going to put it there. The last Digimon in the deck is 1 copy of Quartzmon. This build that I'm focusing on this deck is not a burst mode build. An important thing to note about burst mode is that burst mode cannot digivolve onto Rosemon X for free, because it's Rosemon X, not Rosemon. And that's why I'm not running burst mode in this build. So Quartzmon, a single copy, 2 is definitely an option, but it's struggling to find room. It's a very strong card still, especially the wider the board is, the stronger it is. Yeah, you know, I think everyone knows what Quartzmon does, you know. Can digivolve for cheap, trash security, really mess with opponent stuff. Yeah, no reason not to run 1 Quartzmon. For the Tamers, we have 2 copies of the first BT1 Mimi. She was very strong back then, and she's just as strong right now. Just a memory setter, and the fact she lets us hatch Digi-Eggs lets us really speed up our game process. Using Mimi and hatching the BT14 Palmon in the back is actually quite a threat to the opponent, because it means that whatever they bring out, they risk us going, you know, hitting them with the memory loss effect, and then going Palmon X. And it just lets us keep on going, making stack after stack after stack. with all the Tamers and effects to reduce Digivolution cost, we can go up into our level 6 really fast, and this just helps us go into our level 6 even faster, like, you know, make more level 6s. Really strong card. And again, with Togemon and all the heritables, we want a lot of Tamers. I'd even run 3 memory Tamers in a deck like this, but we don't have the room. The next Tamer is 4 copies of the bt15 Mimi. She's just really good for the deck, and the Togemon plays her for free, which is an important thing to consider. You know, grab something from the top 3, or any Digimon in the archetype, really. And whenever an effect suspends a Digimon, either ours or the opponent's, we can gain a memory. So, yeah, she's just a really good tamer, you know, good for consistency, cheaper than a 4 cost, helps enable a lot of effects. Just very, very solid. The fact that we have so many cards that either, you know, can play a tamer or reduce Digivolution cost with a tamer is why we want 4 of this over something like Cool Boy that doesn't have synergy, well, as much synergy with the deck. Moving on to our options, we start with 3 copies of Agility Training. Agility Training, well, the training options in general are just a pretty strong staple in almost any deck that is monocolor, and this deck is no exception. We really want to grab the right Digimon, can grab Tamers, which we really need. There's no reason not to run it. It can possibly conflict with some effects that let us Digivolve, but overall it's a very, very strong card. Personal preference, you can reduce it to 2 or increase it to 4, but 3 is quite consistent in what it does. Lastly, well, not lastly, but in the same kind of note, we have 1 copy of Green Memory Boost. I just like it for flavor. I like running 3 trainings and 1 memory boost. There are some situations where you would just rather have the memory than have the ability to reduce Digivolution cost by 2. And also, I really like the Salad Memory Boost, so, you know, because I have 1, I'm going to want to run 1. Again, you can, you know, change this to 4 Agility Training if you want, 2 Agility Training, 2 Memory Boost if that's what you have. It is kind of very flexible, but 4 searching options really increases the consistency of the deck. Next up, we run 1 copy of HPD. This is not as good as in this deck as it is in something like Bloomlord, because we don't necessarily want to be suspended. I mean, we actually kind of prefer not to suspend our own stuff. However, the ability to reduce our Digivolution by 5 is still really, really strong and worth kind of missing out on attack. This will let us go, you know, into like a Rosemon X for free from a Lilymon. Lets us go into Quartzmon for 1, and that's really good. It's just a really strong card, even if it's not as good in this deck as it is in other decks. It's limited for a reason, and I feel like 1 copy is still really solid. The final cards in the deck is 2 copies of X Antibody Protoform. I've been looking for a deck to put this in, and this is the deck that I'm running. It will let us go into an X Antibody card for 1 less. And it also helps us defensively, because when our Digimon will leave the battlefield, this card will go into our security, and we can return a Digimon from the stack into our hand. This is why I run like 4 of all the X antibodies, I mean, except for the Rosemon X, but run 4 Powermon X, Togemon X, Lilymon X, is to use this with as much as possible. We can also just use this to go straight from a level 3 into a Togemon X. We can, you know, just go from level 4 straight into a Lilymon X. We can also go into Rosemon X for free instead of for 1, because the Rosemon X antibody does cost 1 on a Rosemon, so Protoform can make it cost 0. I'm trying 2 copies. You really only need to see 1, because once you have 1 and you put in the stack, then this will go into your security, and then you can keep looping it in a way. But 2, you know, increases the consistency of actually seeing 1. So that's it for the cards I've got so far. I know there's a bit of glare where the Quartzmon is, but you should just be able to tell that the Quartzmon on the side, feel free to take a screenshot or anything of the deck right now, just so you can see the cards. And now I'll go into a couple of options for the deck. Firstly, for the eggs, the EX2 Gummymon can replace the Kokomon. They kind of do a similar thing. This draws when you suspend your own Digimon. This draws when you suspend the opponent's Digimon. You actually do both in this deck, so I'm not actually sure which one's better. I do like the art of this a lot more, so I'm tempted just to swap it, just for art's sake. But worth a consideration, depending what you want for the 5th egg. With the Mimi that lets us do extra breeding phase, I really like to run 5 eggs, because the worst thing is using this a lot, but running out of level 3s just to bring out for free. So we really want, I like 5 eggs when you run Mimi. Next is, as I mentioned before, second copy of Lilymon Ace. Feel free to take out any of these Lilymons for a second copy of Ace. I'm not sure how good it is in this deck, or how often I want to go into it. Again, with the X-Body Protoform, we can just ignore Lilymon and go straight into the Lilymon X, and that's perfectly valid. So maybe we don't, need as much Lilymons and we can spare another spot for the Ace. I haven't tested it out though, but feel free to test it yourself. The main other thing is going into a burst mode. So if you want to run burst mode in this deck, which is obviously super valid, it makes it fit more thematically. There's a couple of simple changes you can make to put burst mode in the deck. First of all, if you're going burst mode, I would just run 2 copies of it. You have a lot of searching in this deck, and not a lot of room to put too many level 7s. So I feel like burst mode at 2 is fine. What I would take out is, I would take out 1 copy of Quartzmon, and probably 1 copy of the X antibody Protoform to fit in 2 copies of burst mode. If you wanted to run more, you'd have to cut off the Rosemon X antibody, which doesn't have as much synergy with the burst mode, because you can't go onto X antibody for 0. So you might want to run like 5 Rosemon, 1 X antibody, 2 burst mode. That's an option 2. If you're running the burst mode, then you will swap your Mimis for Yoshino, who's a memory tamer that reduces Digivolution cost. I would actually potentially, instead of having 2 memory tamer, you'd run 3 Yoshino. So just take out the 2 Mimis, the 2 memory tamer Mimis, and 1 of the bt15 Mimis for 3 copy of Yoshino if you're running burst mode. But yeah, pretty simple swaps if you want to put in burst mode. Again, I haven't tried it. I like this build because it's just a little bit more aggressive. It lets you run the Mimis, the X antibody, Quartzmon's really strong. It's just a little bit more less reliant on having Yoshino and burst mode out. Like, this is potentially really strong, but this is a bit more consistent in what it does. But up to you, whatever you prefer. If you're running burst mode, feel free to take out like 1 Palmon and 1 Palmon X to put in a Lalamon or 2. This will help you search both the Digimon and your Tamer. So yeah, you could definitely run this in the deck if you're running Yoshino. If you're not running Yoshino, this isn't as needed because it just searches the Digimon. It won't grab any Tamers. Nearing the end, we have Sunflowermon, which is another option, especially if you don't want to run 4 Togemon X. Because you only run 4 Togemon, you might want to just run it at 3, and you can then fit in a copy of Sunflowermon. He will basically play any of our level 3s or level 4s except Togemon X. We can play all of our Palmons, we can play the Togemon, and we can play the other Sunflowermons with its effect. So this will help us swarm the field a little bit, which is always good. So it's still a solid choice. Again, this card is not as good as it is in this deck as it is in something like Bloomlord, but you can run any green option you like that can take the opponent out, mainly as a security bomb. My favorite security bomb is Grandor Soul, but you can run anything else that exists. However, I find that it's just too expensive to use in the hand and not reliable enough to see in security, so I'm not running anything in this particular deck, just because Grandel Soul isn't good enough in this deck for my liking. Yeah, and that's the deck profile. Hope you enjoyed. I'll potentially be doing an update to the deck profile in a couple of weeks based on testing, and also based on comments. You know, if people comment saying like, hey, you should try this out, you know, I'll definitely try it out at locals. You know, if the suggestion's good, I'm going to try it out at locals, and then I'm going to be like, yeah, that worked out, or no, it maybe didn't work out, but there's only one way to find out. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, hope you enjoy, and see you next time.